Today, good to be with you online. If there are folks online, I can't see you. All right. Well, we're in Ruth 2 and 3. I'm not going to lie. Covering 2 chapters of Ruth in the next 35 minutes is going to be an extraordinary challenge because there's just so much in there. So I'm going to move at lightning speed and then take a breath in about 30 minutes. And see if you have any questions before we break into conversation. So coming off of last week, if you are wondering whether the book of Ruth has any value for you, y'all hear that?
Yeah.
Andy, do we have any idea what that feedback might be?
Somebody's wearing a mic.
Yep. Check. Don't know what the deal is there. We'll press on. Maybe they'll figure it out. If you're wondering why this 3,000-year-old story matters for you, why the story of Ruth and Naomi really matters for you, I think it matters. I don't know if it's my. Is it my mic? It's not my mic.
It's wearing one and it's rubbing up against their sweater.
I'm sorry, that's the sound system.
Yeah. Gotcha. They have an open mic, perhaps.
Looks like Mark's mic is open, it looks like.
All right, I think we are.
I didn't see any
go
open
now.
mics.
Yes. So now we have even less time to cover more material. If you're wondering, let me start it a third time. If you're wondering why Naomi's story matters for you, if you have ever asked these questions, this book is designed to answer these questions. Does God care about my pain? If that's a relevant question for you, this book answers it. Does God cause my pain? If that's a question for you, this book answers that question. Does God care about women? If your wives are wondering whether the faith of Christianity cares for women, this book answers that question. Does God care about those who are on the edges of our community? This book answers that question. If those aren't relevant questions for you, then this is not a relevant book for you. I don't know that I'd say it quite like that, but I think those are questions that we all deal with and struggle with at some point in some way, shape, or form. So we're going to work our way through, I think, the whole 2 chapters. So let's dive in. Now, Naomi had a kinsman on her husband's side, a prominent rich man of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. We're going to put that in the parking lot. Don't think about that verse for the next 20 minutes. Don't think about it. Put it in the parking lot, and we're going to press on. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain behind someone in whose sight I may find favor." And she said to her, Naomi said to Ruth, "Go, my daughter." This sounds familiar. We've been here before, and we've been here before in the sense of in the Bible. If we go back to Deuteronomy 24, what we hear is that God's plan to care for people like Ruth and Naomi, widows. God's plan to care for them was for the people of God to leave food in their fields so that people like widows, aliens, and orphans could come behind them and have something to eat. This is an extraordinarily important point, not just for Ruth, but for us today. And I want to say it as pointedly as I possibly can. God's plan for people who have no other plan, right? That's what a widow is, right? The means by which a widow would have received provision and protection are the men in her life. If she has no husband, no father, and no sons, she has no means of provision and protection in her life. God's plan for people with no plan is for the people of God to be the people of God. God's plan in that moment is you. God's plan was the people of God. That's why it's in the law in Deuteronomy 24. God's plan is still the people of God today. God's plan to care for those who have no other options is for the people of God to be the option. Am I saying that clearly enough? That was the plan. So when Naomi says to Ruth, go into the fields and glean, She's relying upon a long established law. Remember, this story takes place, I don't know, somewhere around 1050 BC, maybe 1100 BC. This is before David. David comes around at 1000 BC. So the law, Deuteronomy, the law that Moses receives from God would have been, I don't know, somewhere around 1250 to 1400, depending on your account and your numbers. So for a couple hundred years, this has been the law for the people of God. Naomi is relying on somebody's kindness to provide for not only her daughter-in-law, but for herself. So we go back to Ruth in verse 3. So she went, Ruth goes. She came and gleaned in the field behind the reapers. As it happened, it's just a coincidence, y'all. As it happened, she came to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Put that in the parking lot. Don't think about it. Don't think about it yet, but know that we're going to talk about it in a minute. Put it in the parking lot. Just then, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to his reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." And then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, "To whom does this young woman belong?" Remember that young women doing things on their own, unknown young women doing things on their own in this culture would have been highly unusual. This catches Boaz's attention. But real quick, we want to start to build out the character of Boaz. What we see right from the beginning is Boaz is, yes, rich and prominent, but he's also a guy who speaks kindly and with dignity to his workers. Right? These are people that Boaz doesn't have to be kind to, but how does he greet them? "The Lord be with you." That's a kind and faithful greeting. We don't want to make too much of it, but over time, we're going to build a picture of who Boaz is, and this is where it begins. Somebody who engages the people around him with dignity, even when he doesn't have to. He's also the kind of person who notices a young woman. At this point, we don't know why Boaz notices a young woman, but he does notice her and asks about her. So the question is, why does he want to know? Ruth 2:6, the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She's the Moabite, yuck, who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." If we were to look back a couple of verses and look forward a couple of verses, time and time again, we see Ruth the Moabite from Moab, Ruth the Moabite from Moab, who came with Naomi from Moab because she's a Moabite and we don't like her because she's a Moabite. Over and over again. You heard Pastor Phil talk about the Moabite story in the last passage. And I want to take this opportunity while I'm just reminding you of this to go to the next slide. Got a nifty little video for you while I talk, I think. Yep, there we go. Will it play? There we go. Remember that the Moabite story is a story of a people born of an incestuous relationship. Lot's daughters are worried they don't have anybody to have kids with. They get their dad drunk. They sleep with their dad, each in their own turn, and then have kids. One of the kids is the father of the Moabites, who's Moab. It is not what Ruth has done that causes the people around her to treat her with disdain. It is who she is that causes them to treat her with disdain. Everybody around Ruth, I just love videos and maps. I mean, just in case we're wondering here, here's Jerusalem. Oh, nope, I'm back. Oh, what? Oh boy, we got to start the video all over. So we're going to go to Jordan. We're going to see Moab. Right here is Jerusalem. Right there is Jerusalem. Here's the Dead Sea. Here's the country of Moab. It's on the other side of the promised land. It's outside the promised land. If you're in Moab, you are among Gentiles. You're among people that we as the people of God do not like or have contact with. We don't want to know you. We don't like you. You don't belong to God. Thus, you have no standing in our community. Ruth the Moabite, her problem is not something she's done in life. It is who she is in life. That is what causes the disdain. I want to drive that home because the way in which you can go on to the next slide, or also we'll all get dizzy and throw up. It's the way that Boaz treats Ruth is extraordinary relative to what we would expect her to receive from the other folks in Bethlehem who are good, law-abiding Jewish citizens. Listen to how this interaction goes. She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers." And so she came. Oh, I was reading that the wrong way. This is the reaper's response, right? Boaz is asked who this Ruth person is, and the reaper is telling Boaz that Ruth said, "Hey, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers." And so she came, and she's been on her feet from early this morning until now without resting for even a moment. We're building out an image of Boaz, and we're also simultaneously building out an image of Ruth. What we learn from Ruth is that she is more than just a Moabite. This is somebody who is hardworking. This is somebody who does not rest. This is somebody, remember that she's in a period of mourning, and so she's dressed in all black. Can you imagine reaping in the fields from morning until night, not stopping for food, not stopping for water, in a giant black robe with the head covering in the middle of the day's heat, sweating profusely, but you keep going, right? All that is kind of under the text right here. We want to build out an image of Ruth that is one that she is more than a Moabite. She's more than just a dainty, pretty little girl. Ruth the Moabite, it turns out, is a woman of strength, a woman of character, and a hardworking woman. So we're just building out these images simultaneously. We'll press on. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter." This is not what we expect from Boaz. What we expect from Boaz is for him to say, "You don't belong here, lady. You can't come take my food. This is for our widows. This is for our orphans. This is for our aliens. You don't belong here." That's what we expect. She's a Moabite. We know what your people are like, and you have no part. That's what we expect from Boaz. It's just, we get the exact opposite. "Now listen, my daughter, do not glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Keep your eyes on the field that's being reaped and follow behind them. I've ordered the young men not to bother you. If you get thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn." And then she fell prostrate. She fell prostrate, not prostate. She fell prostrate with her face to the ground and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me when I am a foreigner?" The CEO addresses the line worker in a conversation we would never expect. Boaz, the rich, prominent landowner, has this incredibly kind conversation with Ruth, the nobody Moabite, and offers two things. He offers provision. He says, "Stay in my field." Not leave my field, stay in my field. Follow my young women. I know the language here could be problematic. We'll deal with that at another time. Stay with my folks and gather what you need. I've already told my young men, don't bother you. 3 or 4 times, we're going to hear Boaz guarantee both Ruth's provision and her protection. This is what Boaz offers Ruth. Boaz doesn't know Ruth, but he offers her provision and protection and guarantees it multiple times. And you can hear Ruth's disorientation in the midst of this. Why would you do this for me? Ruth knows she doesn't belong there. Why would you do this for a foreigner when I'm a foreigner, right? She knows who she is. She knows who Boaz is. She knows this doesn't make sense. And so she says, "Why are you being so kind to me?" Listen to Boaz's response. Boaz answered her, "All that you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me." He's heard more about her than we knew. He's heard more about her story than we realized. "And how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know." Now listen to the blessing that he offers. "May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." Just a rich biblical image there, imagining God as the eagle whose wings provide protection and refuge, right? And then she said, may I continue to find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, even though I am not one of your servants. I think one of the central images we're meant to hear in this is that Boaz sees Ruth. Boaz doesn't see the category. Boaz doesn't see the demographic. Boaz doesn't see the ethnicity. Boaz sees Ruth for who she is. And that compels him toward, or maybe propels him toward, generosity, provision, and protection. When do you think, by the way, was the last time Ruth heard a word of comfort and kindness from somebody who wasn't her mother-in-law? Think about what those words might have felt like for Ruth in this moment. She married, back when she was in Moab, she married foreigners. You think that made good friends with her family and her people? She left her people and her land behind and comes to this land where she's not only an outsider, she's a despised outsider. Think about what those words of kindness, those words of care and comfort, provision and protection must have sounded like to Ruth. Life-changing. I have to imagine that it was a life-changing experience for her. All right, Ruth 2:14. At mealtime, Boaz doubles down and said to her, come here and eat some of this bread and dip your morsel in the sour wine. Listen, the more things change, the more they stay the same. The CEO isn't usually down in the lunchroom eating with your line worker. But Boaz invites the least powerful, least important, most despised person to share in his table. Are you catching a sense of who Boaz is? We're building out that picture of his character and his identity. He doubles down on his kindness and says, come and eat with me. Remember that mealtime for Israelites was awfully close to worship, right? In the way that they viewed sharing a table together. So she sat beside the reapers, and he heaped up for her some parched grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. Think about how long it's been since Ruth heard a kind word. Think about how long it's been since Ruth and her mother-in-law on their own have had a meal. How long has it been since that meal fully satisfied her? How long has it been since she had a meal that satisfied her and with leftovers? You hear the abundance that's being described here. It's an extraordinarily generous move on Boaz's part. He doubles down on what he's already done. When she got up to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, let her glean even among the standing sheaves, and do not reproach her. I'll say a word about that in a second. You must also pull out some handfuls for her from the bundles and leave them for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. What he says is, hey, make it as easy as possible for this young woman to get what she needs. And then he says twice, don't rebuke her, don't reproach her. A better word might be don't plunder her. Boaz knows the danger that Ruth is in and guarantees her safety. Do we see who Boaz is now? It's important, it's crucial to understand who Boaz is as the story unfolds. Okay. Pressing on. 17 and 18. So she gleaned in the field until evening, and then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. She picked it up and came into town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gleaned, and she took it out, gave her what was left over after she herself had been satisfied. She brings out her leftovers, right? An ephah of barley, just to drive home the generosity point. An ephah of barley would have been about 40 liters of barley. I don't know how to do the transition and the measurements there, but let's say it like this. A liter of barley would be about enough food for a day. So what Boaz does on Ruth's first day is to send her home with a Cheesecake Factory portion of barley. I remember in college, by the way, I don't know if y'all had this experience. In college, I didn't grow up going to a bunch of restaurants, really. I remember the first time I went to Cheesecake Factory, it broke my wallet, but also it was more food than I'd ever seen in my life. Who do they expect to eat all of this food? That's what Boaz sends home with Ruth. It's enough barley for more than a month's worth of food. So can you imagine then Naomi's disbelief? Right? Ruth has had this experience all day. Suddenly she sees her daughter-in-law, who went away empty, coming home with a month's worth of food. They're worried about how they're going to survive the next day. And that's what Ruth comes home with. All right, 19. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law, right? Ruth tells Naomi with whom she had worked and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." And then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." This is so important. Right there is the first explicit statement from Naomi that maybe she got it wrong. Do you remember how chapter 1 ended? The Lord has dealt bitterly with me. That's what Naomi says. The only thing that she can imagine is that as her family became an unfamily, surely God caused this. She has a clear sense in which the hand of the Lord has turned against her. But now we see a different understanding of what's going on. She says, I lost it. 20. Blessed be he by the Lord whose kindness is not forsaken the living or the dead. Maybe there is some kindness left. Naomi also said to her, "The man is a relative of ours, one of our nearest kin." And then Ruth the Moabite said, "He even said to me, 'Stay close by my servants until they've finished all my harvest.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, as if we need to know that. We got it. We're like halfway through the story. Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It's better, my daughter." Oh, interesting. Ruth's her daughter-in-law, but Naomi's treating Ruth as a daughter. I don't think that's an accident. "It's better, my daughter, that you go out with the young women. Otherwise, you might be plundered in another field." So she stayed close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvests. And she lived with her mother-in-law. Now, a couple questions. Good Lord, it's 7:30. Why didn't Naomi know about Boaz? We don't really know. Naomi should have known that there was this next of kin person. Naomi should have known that there was a field that could have provided for her. Remember, it was by accident that Ruth lands in Boaz's field. I don't know exactly why Naomi doesn't know about Boaz. But here's something we do know. If you've experienced grief, you know that grief has a unique way of blinding you to what's true around you. It has a unique way of disorienting you to what's true. And I can't help but wonder whether Naomi in her grief has just forgotten that actually God hasn't turned against her and she still has people around her. Perhaps, we don't know. Whatever the reason, she didn't remember about it. Let's see. Gosh, I got to skip so much stuff. Time to press on. Ruth 1-5. Here we go. Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, I need to seek some security for you so that it may be well with you. Now here's your kinsman Boaz, with whose young women you've been working. See, he's winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Now, wash and anoint yourself and put on your best clothes and go down to the threshing floor, but don't make yourself known to the man until he's finished eating and drinking. And when he lies down, observe the place where he lies, then go and uncover his feet, wink, wink, and lie down. And he'll tell you what to do. Good Lord, Naomi, pardon me, my lady. She said to her, all that you do, all that you tell me to do, I'll do it. That's Ruth's response, which I love. Okay. Now, there is a great song about this story. And it's called Here's Your One Chance, Fancy. Don't Let Me Down. If you don't know that song, you need to go listen to it. Because what Naomi just said to Ruth was, here's your one chance, Nip Fancy. Don't let me down. Wash yourself and anoint yourself. Get pretty. Go down to the winnowing floor. This is where they're preparing the harvest. Remember, she worked with Boaz through the end of the harvest. Go down where the men folk are doing their thing. Don't let anybody see you. Let him finish eating and drinking. And notice where he passes out. And then go uncover his feet, which is Bible talk for we don't know. I mean, we can make some guesses, but we know what that is. So what on earth is happening? What it appears to be is Naomi is pimping out Ruth. Isn't that what it sounds like? I want to caution you against that interpretation. What I want to suggest is that everything we know about Naomi, everything we know about Ruth, and everything that we know about Boaz says, surely that's not what's happening in this story. Do it in public. Don't let them know you're there. Naomi wants to make sure that he's finished eating and drinking, make sure he's in the best possible mood. Lots of ink has been spilled about whether uncovering his feet is a sexual euphemism. It undoubtedly is, but it's also something more. Hold on to that thought. Let's see. Yeah. Gosh, gotta skip that too. Shoot. Let's press on. So she went down the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed her. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and he was in a contented mood, it's the Bible's way of winking at you, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight, the man was startled and turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. He's startled too. All this is leading us to the edge of our seat. And the question that it causes us to ask is this. Wait a minute. Is Ruth who we thought she was? Is Naomi who we thought she was? Is Boaz who we thought he was? It leads us to the edge of our chair. What will they do? The audience is aware. We are aware that this is a setting that is ripe for seduction and sin. Is that where we are headed? Listen to Boaz's response when he wakes up to find a lady who's uncovered his feet. She's not talking about feet. He said, "Who are you?" It's dark. Remember, it's nighttime. Our eyes are a little blurry. We've had quite a bit of sour wine by now. "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your cloak over your servant, for you are next of kin." Now, what's going on? If Ruth's expectation here was to seduce Boaz, is that how she would respond? I don't think so. If Ruth wanted to seduce Boaz, I don't think she needs to say a whole lot at this point, since Boaz is naked. He's not naked. When you're naked like that, you're naked. Since Boaz is naked, she doesn't need to say a whole lot. Her words here indicate that this is not about seduction for Ruth. And that's not what Naomi was suggesting either. What she says is spread your cloak over your servant. This is an image that's so close to the wings that we heard earlier that Boaz was talking about, the wings of God's protection. And then she says, "For you are next of kin." And that's a technical term And it's so easy for us to miss. If you're reading along, perhaps in the NIV, is anybody reading the NIV right now? No? What's it say for next of kin right there? You are a redeemer. If you're reading the NIV, I think it says kinsman redeemer. For you are next of kin. This is the word that Naomi has been using all along to describe Boaz. And the Hebrew word there is goel. Very technical, very, very important word for this story. And we've buried the lead. I kind of buried the lead on purpose. Here's what you need to know. The way that Israelite culture was built was it was a patriarchal culture. And that has a bad name now. I don't believe God ordains a patriarchal culture, but God uses the patriarchal structure to reveal something of himself. He chooses a moment in history to enter into. It happened to be a patriarchal moment. So here's how God uses that culture, not ordains it and blesses it, but uses it. The role of the patriarch in the Betab, which is the Hebrew word for family, the role of the patriarch is to provide protection, nourishment, clothing, shelter, provide for the existence of the family. However, at some point in time, as would often happen in this culture, a member of the family would be lost in war. A member of the family would be lost in debt. A member of the family would be lost in immoral living, and they would be sold in slavery. They would become indebted to somebody and would be essentially a slave to somebody else or a prisoner of war in somebody else's tribe. It was the role of the patriarch to pay whatever price, financial or otherwise, to secure the liberation of that family member and their return to the Beitav, to the family. The Goel is the kinsman redeemer. The word for that is redemption. That's where the word redemption comes from, is the process of the patriarch paying the price to free and secure the future of the family member. Boaz is a kinsman redeemer. Boaz is the redeemer of the story. What Ruth asks of Boaz is to fulfill his responsibility as the kinsman redeemer. This is the turning point in the story. She's not asking for sex, y'all. She's asking for future. She's asking for a future. The distance there couldn't be any more broad. When we read this through the lens of seduction, we diminish Ruth and lose the thread of the story. Ruth didn't baby trap Boaz into a relationship. Ruth instead, at Naomi's direction, invites Boaz to be who God made him to be, which is the kinsman redeemer. Guardian redeemer. I don't like that as much. Kinsman redeemer. It's a family redeemer. Guardian redeemer. What in the world? Well, I clearly know more than they do, so I'm kidding. That's a fine way to translate it. The notion is a family guardian, somebody who's going to pay the price to redeem, liberate Ruth and Naomi from their destitute living, right? Ruth and Naomi have nobody to care for them. This is the heart of Ruth's request. So moving on to verse 10, because I've run completely out of time. He said, may you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty or hesed is better than the first. You've not gone after young men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I'll do for you all that you ask. For all the assembly of my people know that you are a worthy woman. If she was trying to seduce Boaz, his response makes no sense. He says, I'll do all that you ask. She wasn't asking for sex. She's asking for marriage and provision. And he describes, yes, her has said, shoot, I want to say more about that. But now is verse 12. But now, though it's true that I'm a near kinsman, there is another kinsman more closely related than I. It was the nearest male relative who was responsible for being the Goel. He says, look, there's somebody who's actually more closely related to you than I am. Remain this night, and in the morning, If he'll act as next of kin or kinsman redeemer for you, then great. Let him do it. If not, if he's not willing to act as next of kin for you, then as the Lord lives, I will act as next of kin for you. Lie down until the morning. And so she laid his feet till morning, but got up before one person could recognize another, for he said, it must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Right? He's trying to protect her reputation, because we all know what happens when everybody gets drunk and then a young lady comes and uncovers your feet at night. He says, I'm going to protect your reputation even. Right? That's who Boaz is. So he hatches a plan that we'll see come to fruition at the end or in chapter 4. Last few verses of chapter 3. Then he said, bring the cloak that you're wearing and hold it out. So she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her back. And then he went into the city. She came to her mother-in-law, who said, hey, how'd things go last night? How'd you do, fancy? Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said, do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. And she replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. Good Lord, it's at the end of my time, but let me say this. Naomi leaves Bethlehem at the beginning of our story, full and blessed, with a husband and 2 sons. The picture of a blessed Israelite family. Naomi returns to Bethlehem completely empty. Her family has become an unfamily. She went away full. She came back completely empty. I went away, Naomi, or pleasant. I'm coming back Mara and bitter. Ruth goes away in the morning, completely empty, comes back with an ephah of barley. Do you want to know how God shows up in the story? It's not by miraculous intervention. God doesn't show up in the story by, causing an ephah of grain to suddenly appear out of thin air. God shows up in the story by the people of God being the people of God. The plan that existed then is the same plan that exists today. There are Ruth and Naomi's all around us. And the question that they're asking us, hopefully with slightly less sexual innuendo, is, will you be my kinsman redeemer? Will you be the one who steps up and fulfills your responsibility to protect and provide for the community, for the people who can't do it for themselves? Here's your questions. Boaz sees Ruth in a way that no one else was willing to see her, as a person of worth and value rather than a person defined by her background. Does that kind of thing come naturally for you? If so, why? If not, why? The idea of a kinsman redeemer is an obvious foreshadowing of the work of Christ on the cross. This is one of the central images of the identity of Jesus. He is our kinsman redeemer who paid the price to free us from bondage and slavery to sin and death. However, the concept was born out of an everyday concern for those who are most vulnerable within a given society. Is there any sense in which we are called to be kinsmen redeemers today? I think you know how I feel about that. What are you carrying away from the story of Boaz's response to Ruth's request? Questions of clarification before you break into groups? There's way too much to do in one setting. I apologize. Anything I can clear up for you? Okie doke.